Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Dave,
Yes.
to the bonus show is fantastic. I feel like I'm turning into Captain Planet. Twice in 1 month now, I've sort of had, I guess what you would call an altercation or an exchange of some sort with littering pedestrians on my way into work.
Right.
This time there were words exchanged. I'll get to that later. It's
Please,
a good one. First, I saw this interesting article on Gizmodo asking if sperm banks are in the business of eugenics. And we've discussed things about sperm banks in the past. They can be very selective of their donors. But now a prominent sperm bank in the UK is under investigation after turning away donors with dyslexia and other, I guess what you could call questionable characteristics. Whatever that means. Britain's Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority, which regulates sperm banks, has launched a review of the London Sperm Bank. That's what it's called, London Sperm Bank. After being alerted to its practices by The Guardian. A lot going on here. So they are turning away people with dyslexia, other common conditions, ADHD, ADD, things like that, and conditions it describes as neurological diseases. So there's a pamphlet, they have here the book, reasons why a man cannot be accepted as a donor. Some of these include severe obsessive compulsive disorder. They are being very, very selective here. This article, and perhaps The Guardian, points out that they are even denying people who have conditions that are either extremely, extremely loosely linked to genetics or not linked to genetics at all. And I guess some people think it's absurd that ADD, OCD, and dyslexia are on the list.
Well, so let's break this down into its component parts. If they're turning people away for non-genetic conditions, then it's not eugenics by definition. It might just be stupid or discriminatory, but it is not eugenics because what is eugenics? Eugenics it's practices that aim at improving the genetic quality of the human population. If you turn someone away for something that is not passed through genetics, then it is not eugenics by its definition. At the same time, there are many practices. I think, eugenics, because of the Nazis and for other reasons, has a sort of very negative connotation. But any practice that aims at improving the genetic quality of the human population is eugenics of sorts. And when we talked about genetic editing in order to prevent certain diseases, that is by definition eugenics, isn't it? And you don't have that many people who say that's a terrible idea. You have some, but not that many.
Right. And, from the point of view of someone who is accepting this donation, you want the best possible product, I guess you could say, of course. And I have to say that if it were me, and let's say I couldn't conceive and whatever, my wife, is going through this process, honestly, I feel like I would want all of this stuff weeded out as well. I mean, regardless of the connection to genetics or any of that, I mean, why leave any doubt? Now, at the same time, there are people pointing out that this type of process or this form of eugenics, I guess as it's called, may be a really bad thing in that it may affect creativity and artisticness and things like that. Now, dyslexia is one of the things they point out.
Right.
And there's, I guess, a history of dyslexic people thinking about things differently, leading them to great success. And some of those people are Albert Einstein and Steve Jobs, dyslexic.
Interesting.
Yes, so there are some interesting points made there about that. But, I mean, how would you feel if you were in that position and you had to go to one of these banks and...
Right, what would I ask for?
Yeah.
Would I say, hey, listen, given any choice, I'm indifferent between... the
guy
from someone who had dyslexia or not. Right. Most people would say, well, I mean, if it's all the same, I guess I'd rather the non-dyslexic sperm for this conception. There's amniocentesis, right? The process by which you can find out relatively early if a fetus has Down syndrome, and you're not told definitively, but you can be told it's it's quite likely or it's quite unlikely, right? You can be told that. That is not necessarily eugenics by its definition, but we are essentially talking about narrowing the variance of those who are born. If you take a policy of I'm okay with abortion conceptually, and if I find out that I'm pregnant with a fetus likely to be born as a baby with Down syndrome, I'm going to choose to have an abortion. You are certainly narrowing the gene pool of those who are going to be carried to term and born. So in a sense, it is making decisions that, as Lewis says, are going to narrow the variety of people that are born. And I guess societally, there are questions there about whether that is a good thing or whether it starts to be reminiscent of things Nazis were doing.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. When people conceive, some people get tested. They get their genetics tested. They say, what are the chances, that our child is going to have some type of disease? What is going to happen? What are the risks? Most people don't do that. I mean, most people are completely rolling the dice. And
you're saying with regard to choosing to get pregnant,
I'm just talking about like the disease risks or the genetic disorder risks.
Right. Although increasingly people are doing amnio and finding out how likely it is that the fetus that is already in the mother has certain conditions. That is increasingly common. But I've never heard of people sitting down and saying, listen, we should first evaluate our genetics to decide whether we should even try to have a child. I've never heard of people doing that, although I'm sure it happens.
Yeah, and then you have people who have family histories. Sometimes both sides of the family will have histories of whatever, and people will just decide not to have children, or they'll go through the testing because it's just that obvious. But anyway, I would say that as a business decision, I understand what the bank is doing here. I mean, it does make sense from a business perspective. Okay, so first let me get into this trash story.
Yes.
I told Dave the first incident I had where I was walking into the studio, on my way to the studio, and there was a girl in front of me, I assume younger than me, had headphones in. She was, I don't know, maybe just about 10, 15 feet in front of me. And I saw her finish up whatever she was eating or doing, and she just throws a napkin onto the ground right in front of me. It was one of those paper napkins. It looked like it was probably already made from recycled material. Will probably decompose, degrade, whatever, biodegradable, who knows. Not a major offense, but obnoxious nevertheless.
Sure.
So as I'm walking by her seconds later, I just look at her and I give her the meanest look I can possibly give anyone.
As you're passing her?
As I'm passing by. And a look that I give her for several seconds as I'm passing by. And I just assume she got the idea. She didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. It looked like she felt a little uncomfortable. Maybe I got the point across. Maybe she thought I was just a psycho. I don't know.
Could be.
And I told Dave about that. And today, there was a much bigger infraction, if you will. Mm-hmm. Two guys that are approaching me. And I think I've walked by these guys before.
Interesting.
On my way to work, which means I'll probably walk by them again.
Right.
One of them is holding a big plastic Dunkin' Donuts cup, which for some reason is inside of a big styrofoam cup. And he just puts it on kind of like a brick or stone thing just on the side of the road, next to the sidewalk as he's walking. And I stop at it when they've already passed me. And I look at it and I look at them and I think, what the hell? I'll pretend I'm Captain Planet here. And I pick it up and I yell, I go, hey, it was much louder than that. I had to get their attention. And I start walking towards them.
And they turn around?
They turn around. And one of them is standing to my right, and the other one I'm standing right in front of, which is the guy who put the thing down. I would say these guys are younger than us, a bit younger than us probably. And
physically bigger, smaller?
I mean, I was taller than both of them. The other guy was closer to my height. The one I was talking to was pretty short.
Okay.
Certainly not physically imposing or menacing in any way, either one of them.
Okay.
Maybe I would have thought twice if this was some monster monster motherfucker who could have just, folded me into a ball.
This is the best.
But so I look at him and I say, "What the fuck is this?" I'm clearly agitated, and he starts trying to act tough right off the bat, and he's like, "Yeah, so what? What about it?" But he's clearly uneasy, you know. And I don't back down at all. Like if these guys want to throw down, I'm more than willing to. At this point, I'm invested.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, "What, do you just leave trash around? Why did you leave this over there?" And he's like, said something like, it's like, "I don't know." He's like, "It's not a big deal." I'm like, "Yeah, it kind of is a big deal. Like, why don't you have some respect for your city?" And I said, "Do you live in a dump? I don't get it." And he's like, the other guy was like, "Come on, let's just go." But I never once made eye contact with the other guy.
Right. You weren't even going to what am I trying to say? Validate his presence in this by acknowledging him.
All right. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, he doesn't even exist. Right.
Okay.
So I never once looked at him. And I mean, this was a very short exchange, but he ended up like saying exactly this as he took it out of my hands. He's like, "All right, fine, sorry," and held it and walked away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, he might have just put it right down as soon as you were out of eyeshot.
I turned around and I don't think he did.
Wow.
I think he carried it at least out of sight.
Imagine if, so in my mind, I immediately go to, what did those guys say to each other as soon as they separated? Right, the most likely thing, that guy was a prick, right? But maybe, imagine if they said, "You know what? I think that guy was right. I really don't think that it's respectful to my city to leave trash around. This is styrofoam and it's not biodegradable, and I need to be more careful about what
plastic.
I'm doing." Incredibly unlikely that that's what happened.
Styrofoam and plastic, but maybe I made him think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hoping he's thinking about it. What I should have said was, "Would you leave this on your front lawn?" or something like that, But I was so fired up that you don't choose your words as carefully in a situation like that. Your mind is racing.
Lewis goes from litterer as a child to litter police as an adult.
Yeah, of course. I littered. I was like 12, but you grow up. These kids weren't 12.
Right.
I mean, they were at least in their mid-20s. It looked like to me.
Yeah. The one I find really annoying is the. Obviously, plastic cup. It's crazy, right? What are you doing? But the cigarette butts on the ground. Yeah. And I know some people. You say it to them, and they go, "No, listen. I throw this thing in a trash can. Next thing you know, the trash can's on fire because it's still, the cigarette's hot and there's a piece of paper in there or whatever."
Yeah.
And but still, just the idea of, okay, I'm gonna go outside and I'm gonna smoke the cigarette. This is bad for me. It's bad for people around me. But then on top of everything, I'm just gonna throw the cigarette on the ground, right? To me, that's the height of just being inconsiderate around trash.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to start with, that's how most big fires happen. Like forest fires.
Is that true?
Brush fires. Oh, yeah.
Cigarettes.
Many of them start with someone throwing a cigarette out of a car window. A lot of the time you're throwing it into a fucking tinderbox.
Yeah.
And boom. But it is annoying. But as far as pollution goes, I mean, the stuff that's in whatever tobacco is left in there is probably worse than the paper it's wrapped in.
Probably, yeah.
But, in Austin, there were no designated. This is a street where I don't know how many, a lot of smokers, high percentage of smokers on 6th Street
in Austin,
any given night. And there was no place to throw a cigarette butt. And people would ask me, "Where do I put this?" I say, you throw it into the street. They clean it every night.
Huh.
The next morning, the street would be swept clean.
Right.
I don't know where it goes or what they do with it. But, and people, even smokers many smokers thought that was crazy.
Yeah.
I'm like, I guess there's a trash can over there. I never saw it set ablaze, but.
Right.
There's
a thing where a lot of people find out, like there was a thing in Western Massachusetts where Northampton started a recycling program and everybody was notified. This was maybe like 12, 15, who knows how long, right? Northampton, Massachusetts was pretty advanced with the recycling program. You've got your trash, you've got your plastic recycling, and then your paper recycling. A lot of people know about this. And people went through all this trouble. Everybody got bins and the Northampton Public Works, blah, 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 right? This whole thing. And then, of course, Northampton trash was brought to Springfield, and presumably there the same separation existed. People tracked it. In Springfield, the recycling and the trash were combined. Springfield, which was like the hub for the surrounding towns, was not yet set up. Huge waste of time. Eventually, that was changed, And we've found out about other times where supposedly things are being separated and recycled, and then you find out that it's all going into the same place. And in fact, I believe that when we were in elementary school or middle school, or I don't remember where, but something rings a bell about how there were recycling bins. But then we would see the janitors come by and dump the trash and the recycling into the same big barrel.
Right. Yes, I do remember that. I don't remember which school it was, but that happened.
Yeah.
And I know this is like over 10 years ago at this point, but when I went to school in Florida, there just was no recycling anywhere.
Yeah.
There was just no recycling. Incredible. I mean, and really not that surprising considering it's Florida, but
there are some confusing ones now. Because now I was always used to, you've got trash and then you've got paper recycling and plastic recycling. Then things switched in a lot of places to single stream, right? So now it's paper and any recycling goes in the same place, and then machines separate it later. Convenient, right? But now a lot of places have trash, recycling, and compost. And sometimes the instructions are not that clear. I'm thinking of one cafe in particular in downtown Northampton, Massachusetts, that I sometimes go to, Haymarket Cafe, where it says compost, trash, food scraps, right? But not trash, including straws and plastic lids and paper cups, like to-go cups. But then next to that, you have recycling, which is plastic. So I'm like, wait, so hold on a second. Aren't the straws are the straws and lids a different type of plastic? Do those go? And I see people who go up to the thing and they stand there with their whatever they have, and they look.
That.
They're visibly confused. And what do? They throw everything in the trash because you don't want to have the wrong thing in the recycling ones. It figures, you know what?
Yeah.
Instead of messing up the different compost and recycling bins, I'll just go with trash. And I don't want to fill up the landfill, but at least I'm not going to put things in the wrong place.
Yeah. I have been in that situation before because you'll go to different places. There will be different colors. I mean, it's not standardized, right?
Right.
The recycle bin, the trash, and the compost will have different colors. They'll have different signs. They'll have different criteria depending on the state, or even within your state, depending on the town or business or whatever. And I've definitely been that person standing in front of 3 or 4 bins with my tray and a bunch of stuff on it thinking this is obnoxious.
Yeah. There was one place we went, I think it was remember when we went up to Mount Snow? It was for, you were there for a friend's wedding, and I went up the next day to some beer fest or whatever. I remember that there would be barrels, there would be groups of 4 barrels, and each lid had different holes cut out of it. And you would think, oh, this is clearly the lid for putting a bottle through, and this is clearly the lid for general trash or whatever. And I remember it was the most confusing trash situation I've ever seen. I could not figure out what was what.
Yes, that was, I don't remember the trash situation, but that was a good time.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
All right. Anyway, we'll just say Happy New Year.
Right.
I don't even know what my plans are.
Me neither.
For tonight.
At first, I thought I was going to be back in Western Massachusetts. Now it's not clear. I might be here, but if I'm here, the potential plans that are on the table aren't the best. And I actually don't care that much about New Year's. I really don't. But tomorrow's a day off or whatever, and et cetera. But yeah, I don't know what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah. All right. Well, me neither. But anyway, Happy New Year to everyone.
To all.
And thank you for your membership.
Patronage.
I was going to say continued patronage.
Right.
But I don't want to imply anything. Next week you may see Dave's hair and you think I just can't be a member anymore. And
out of your 2 million memberships, you were actually going to cancel 100,000 of them, right?
It's just been too much managing them all.
Yeah.
I've outsourced it to India and China, and it's too much. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.